Hi there. You're listening to the Voice with Action podcast. I am your host, Deb Balico.
And I am Rebecca Pratt, co-founder and president of Orphan Relief and Rescue. Tune in to be awakened and inspired to take action towards what you were created to do in this world, to live fully alive.
Hope you enjoy this previously recorded interview with Luciana and Pedro Bartes on the sound of Puget Sound radio station in Seattle, Washington.
We have such an amazing guest today. This person, it's so outstanding what they do for the kids.
Our guest is amazing. Unfortunately, what she has to deal with, it's terrifying. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm going to ask you this. What do you think is the fastest product for sale in the world today?
The fastest product for sale. Cars?
Do you think it's oil, coffee, corn? None of them. It's human beings. Oh my. It's human trafficking. And this is what our guest talks about today. Rebecca Pratt, she took matters in her own hands and she created Orphan Relief and Rescue. She's also the host of Voice with Action, which airs Sundays 2 p.m. on 8:20 a.m. KGNW The Word. And Rebecca Pratt came today to talk to us about what Orphan Relief and Rescue does. Rebecca Pratt, welcome to the Sound of the Puget Sound.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Tell us how Orphan Relief and Rescue was born.
Yeah, it was when my family and I lived on a hospital ship. It was an organization called Mercy Ships, and we worked with that organization for 8 years, 2 years on one of their hospital ships in Africa. And on the weekends, we would just help hungry children, in orphanages or street children situations, and we did that just on the side for 2 years. And
how did you end up there? I mean, why is your family doing that?
Yeah, we just always thought one day we'll do some missions with our family. We wanted to expose our kids.
And just said, okay, let's go and do it.
Yeah, we wanted to expose our kids to the big world out there, and help people.
How old were your kids when you decided to do that?
3, 6, and 8. When we were on the ship, they were 10, 12, and 15.
What an
adventure. You're committed to this. I love it.
Yeah.
So you were there for 2 years with your family. Mm-hmm. And what did you see while you were there?
A lot of the orphanages, we were in one of the countries called Liberia, and they had a civil war that they had just finished. Mm-hmm. And before the Civil War, they said there were 10 orphanages in existence. After that Civil War, there was 145 that came into existence. So it was mass chaos with all of these kids. A lot of the kids in these orphanages, which we didn't know until we started digging into it, but a lot of them did have families alive. The kids did, and the parents literally just couldn't feed them, so they were just dropping them off at the orphanages. So we realized really quickly that we had to help the government weed through who was good, who was bad, who was using kids as a business, exploiting the kids. Lots of corruption stuff was happening through that, where people were starting orphanages to get funding from the West, and even starving their kids with horrific photos so that the people in the West would, donate and, just huge, awful stuff. There was trafficking rings happening through these orphanages. So
how do you
do this?
Who to trust? Because we understand, we come from another country, Argentina, and there's a lot of corruption there.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes very difficult to know who is doing things because they really care and who is just doing it because of the money and power.
Yes. Yeah, so unless you have your feet on the ground and you're in these homes, you're not going to find out truth.
You were there. You saw what was going on.
So we had one orphanage where some people from the West came, and they fell in love with the kids, of course. They see the impoverished situations, and they went home and started a reality show and started giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to this orphanage. And we were in there doing a feeding program. We always did a 3-month feeding program. And we would say, with this food, we're going to put monitors in there that are mandatory to be there when we deliver food, and they're going to be hanging out with your kids just to, make sure everything goes well.
Of course, yeah.
And of course, they're going to say yes because they want the food.
But then they're going to try to push them aside.
Absolutely. So we found out truth at that point of basically you're finding out everything in 3 months. The kids are telling you stuff. And this orphanage director was literally raping these little girls every night.
Oh.
Yeah. And we didn't find that out until like month number 3 because they had to trust us. Those kids had to trust us. And then one of the girls literally pulled one of our monitors, who was actually a nurse as well, and said, "Can I talk to you? Can I tell you about something very serious?" And then she shared what the director does.
Is it difficult for the kids to trust you?
Absolutely. Yeah, they don't know who to trust. And
the thing that is they've trusted so many adults before, and they got disappointed.
Yeah,
to say the least.
Yeah.
So you are just another adult they need to trust.
So we got the social welfare office involved at that point and was able to get that girl out as protection immediately. We got them legally closed, and then they reunified kids. And he just went down the road and started another orphanage under a different name, got more kids in there. Got a lot of the same kids actually back because the parents were eager to, keep offloading their kids to him.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was under this happened 3 different times, but I contacted the group in America and I let them know this is who you're supporting. And number one, they didn't believe me. They said, "We can't believe that he would do that. No, we don't." And I said, "Well, I want you to know we have people in there and this is the truth.
This is really going on.
And what you do with your money is up to you. But we're just saying you're funding him to continue this kind of abuse." And they had bought property. They were ready to build a whole new orphanage compound and school and everything. And so the woman that I talked to, she says, "Boy, this is terrible because I have so many donors that are vested now emotionally and, with money." And she says, "I don't know what I'm going to do." And that was basically my conversation with her. But one after the next, this is what we uncovered. And so we helped the government at that point put an accreditation program together of accrediting orphanages.
Okay.
And basically it was for them to be able to say, this one is accredited and safe, and we acknowledge that these are good directors that should be open and take care of kids, and this is the standard that we're placing for them. And then help them reunify kids in these orphanages that did have parents alive who should be the ones taking care of the kids. Even though they're in poverty, they still should be taking care of those kids. And so we had a whole reunification process that we helped them with as well, and then the follow-up of how to help them. And UNICEF was involved at that point as well with our team. And, it was crazy, but it opened our eyes to the reality of, just because somebody has an orphanage.
So when you started Orphan Relief and Rescue, what was your objective?
Yeah,
what was your mission?
So the biggest mission is, there's so many great orphanage organizations out there that help orphan children. And I thought, number one, I didn't want to open up our own organization if we didn't have to. But I thought, okay, if we're going to say yes to this, then we're going to help the children that no one else is helping. They're going to fall through the cracks, and no one knows what to do with these kids that are
What kind of kids are the ones that
the ones in the most complicated situations, the ones in these orphanages that literally are in abusive situations that governments literally don't know even what to do with. They shut down an orphanage and then they go down the street and help, do some more. So we thought we're going to get in there and physically figure out how to get our people inside of these homes, a lot of private detective type stuff. And that is where we ended up uncovered trafficking, situations. And then we'd go to the government and say, this is what's happening in this home. And then they would go and legally close them down, reunify the kids. And of course, they would get publicity for it, that they shut down this trafficking ring.
Sorry, but who cares? As long as we save that kid, that's fine.
And my staff would say, well, that was great. They got all the credit. And I says, that's the best thing.
Yeah.
Because we don't want these directors to know we're the ones going in and doing this investigation. We're the good people just feeding hungry kids, And we're just the nice people.
And they trust you. They let you in their circle.
So when you say trafficking, what do you mean? Where do these kids go?
Okay, so trafficking in this area, because trafficking means a lot of different things in different areas. Trafficking in the orphanage scenarios is parents in the rural country areas are sending their kids, because they have a hard time feeding them, they're sending them to the city, to these orphanages, so that their kids would be educated. They would get, food, and they would go to school. And that's how these directors would spin it to get as many kids as they could into these orphanages so that their numbers would go up, so that they could get more money from the West. Okay. So I always tell people, never give money from people you meet on Facebook or any other social media thing, and you don't know if they're legit unless you are on the ground or you have somebody that you absolutely trust 100% to go in and be there on a regular basis to actually see what's happening. You know, for us, it took months to uncover these trafficking rings and these abusive situations. And that was with our people in those homes every single day. Wow. So they're the greatest con artists in the world.
What is the percentage of orphanages that really help compared to the ones that, like you said, just trying to get the money and trying to, unfortunately, abuse these kids?
I would say 80%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 80%. And I honestly put pastors in that same category.
Wow. I have a question.
Yeah.
You are one person. You went with your family. How did you get so powerful? Who's there helping you with all this?
Yeah, so we took a team on the ground. It wasn't just our family. It was rallying a team. We have a team of people that we worked with in Mercy Ships is how we started, and they weren't any longer with Mercy Ships. And we just grabbed some young adults that were professionals. You know, one was a nurse, one had engineering skills and different skills, administration skills, and they started our first office in Liberia. And then it was working directly with the social welfare office. So we went to the social welfare office and we literally said, we want you to tell us where hungry children are. And if you're thinking that they're probably going to die if they're not given some aid, just let us know and we'll go in there and we'll feed hungry children. And so immediately the social welfare office, you know, different officials would tell us, oh, that orphanage, you know, those kids are super hungry. We're really worried about them. Go in there. Well, then when we go in there, we started seeing corruption stuff, you know, and then we thought, okay, well, we need to like not just drop off food because we realized the directors were going to sell that food, you know, and
you need to stick around.
So we have to stick around. What does that look like? You got to put people in there that are monitors. And so we put our monitors that were locals in that home, and then our Western team would just oversee them and directly talk to those monitors every day. What's going on? And, you know, the monitors, a lot of it was just sitting with kids and plaiting their hair, you know, braiding their hair in the day and just hanging out, you know. But
well, that's how you get kids to open up to you.
Yes. But it was literally a plan to just get to know what's actually happening, you know. So that's how we started, was feeding hungry kids. And then it just morphed into uncovering stuff. And then when you uncover stuff, you got to do something about it with the social welfare office. And then you got to create programs to keep kids safe. And at that time, it was post, 14 years Civil War. The child protection laws were just, nobody knew what they were. Exactly. Oh. So it was like bringing those back in. Okay, what are the laws to protect children? And then you have to say, well, the new president has to actually vote on all these laws. And so we just pulled, UNICEF was really great to help in those early days of putting that structure together. And then we were the hands and feet to help the social welfare implement those things. So those were the early years. And then the other country in West Africa, which I'm not going to mention because there's some issues with the officials not acknowledging that slavery is in their country and they don't want people to talk about it. So I just say West Africa, know, and, uncovering this whole other scenario where we were working basically 20 minutes away from the largest child trafficking export area in the country. It was actually a judge in that area that was rescuing kids, a local judge that was rescuing kids daily from the border. And he was begging us, please start an orphanage safe home for these kids that I bring back. And I said, we couldn't build enough to accommodate how many kids you rescue. And he says, well, if you're not going to build another home, then please just get your people into these villages. And I will give you official documents so you can legally go into those areas and not be questioned. And your people will just be like officials to curb poverty is how they put it on paper.
Well, it's good to have someone there that's an official that works for the government that really wants to help.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What kind of programs do you offer now to those children?
So in the one West Africa where the trafficking is so huge, we are literally intercepting kids from being sold. Like next day, we find out a child's going to be sent to the border and taken into slavery. And
this is to work in mines? Whatever.
Yes. It's a little bit of everything. Farms, mines, rock quarries, household. Women are purchasing them to work in their household in the day.
How old are these kids that we're talking about?
4 to 12 is kind of the average.
Old.
Yeah.
It breaks my heart.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, these little ones. And so women are purchasing the little ones for, they call them domesticades, to work in their homes. And they like the little ones because they can train them on how to do everything the way they want it done. And then when that girl becomes in puberty, she's also grooming that girl to be her husband's mistress at night.
Oh, my gosh.
And these women, this is what they do.
Is this accepted in the society when they see this? Nobody's like alarmed and complaining or doing anything about it?
Yeah, is this something normal in this society?
Nobody talks about it. This is the thing, including the president.
Yeah, of course.
You know?
Yeah, no.
So now, technically, trafficking is illegal in that country. But there's a clause, you know, if you're having a hard time as a family and you need to send your child somewhere to work for their own keep, you know, they're going to go to school and get fed and, you know, be taken care of. So it's just a middle-class family that's going to take this child in to relieve your burden.
And parents also have to turn a blind eye because they really can't raise their kids.
Yeah. Yeah. So we intercept kids from being taken to the border to be what we say sold, because that's what's happening. Yeah. They're getting an exchange of money for that child. So we are intercepting them from being taken, and we go to the family when we know that a child's going to be gone soon. You know, usually it's a social welfare office, a neighbor, the chief of the village. Someone is telling our staff, who are all locals working there as our anti-trafficking team. And so our locals will go to that home and say, we heard that you're going to send your child tomorrow to this neighboring country with an uncle or whatever. And we want to tell you that that's called trafficking. That's illegal. We don't want you to get in trouble. So we want to put your child into school and on a feeding program, 2 meals a day. And we want to help you as the parent through our microfinance savings and loan program.
Sounds amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And they all 100% say, oh, well, you just solved my problem.
Right.
Okay.
Because you're not only preventing the child from being trafficked, but you're also preventing the parents to thinking about doing it again.
Yes. So through those programs is where we introduce them to this God of love, and his name is Jesus. And everything changes when they start putting their faith and their trust and turning their life over to Jesus. We see that where they didn't have that natural affection for their children, this is also the voodoo capital of the world. In the religious practice, I'd say 95% of them practice the voodoo religion. And in that practice, we've seen that they just don't have that natural affection for their children. There's no value for life in that religious practice. So what we have seen is Jesus truly is the answer for valuing life, number one, valuing their children. You know, we're helping on a practical way to help them out of the poverty scenario, but then, you know, just valuing your child enough to care for their well-being. When they're in that religious practice, they're not caring for their well-being. So when they're in poverty and they can't feed all their kids, they're picking one to sell.
Right.
You know, but once they come to Jesus,
it's not worth it to keep the child.
Also, the fact that the church brings a sense of community, family that they didn't have before.
Yes.
And that involves neighbors, involves more people than just the family, the small family.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, they come to Jesus, their eyes are opened, they begin to value their children, and even when they're in hardship, they no longer entertain sending their child away.
Because you have changed, you did a shift in their values.
Yep. Yeah. And so now they're doing whatever they can apart from trafficking when they come to Jesus. And that's where the beautiful transformational, you know, cultural of abuse and trafficking stops, and the beautiful life of walking with Jesus. And the answer to it all is Jesus, and obviously helping the two hands of the gospel is the physical and the spiritual together.
And by the way, even though you preach for Jesus, you don't turn anyone away because they are not Christians.
No. I mean, we have witches that come to us and they want to be on our microfinance. The first witch that came to us, my staff calls me and they said, you know, we have a witch that wants to be in our microfinance.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're using this term in 2025. But go on.
I know. Now, a witch constitutes that they sacrifice human life. They do a lot of horrific things.
Whoa.
Okay, so you're not a witch unless you're doing the most horrific satanic stuff. So the people in the voodoo religion practice, they're doing curses and hexes on people and the voodoo dolls and all those things. But they don't consider that witchcraft. That's just voodoo, okay? It's different. So they've told me this is different. When you say witch or witchcraft, that's a new level. That's the worst of the worst. That's abducting a child and sacrificing them. That's killing somebody so you could take their heart and eat it, so you could gain more power. That's witchcraft.
How do they think they can reach out to you?
Okay, so...
it's black and white.
It's black and white. So, the witches are tormented by life, but a lot of them are practicing this out of fear. They believe they have no other choice, and if they don't, they're going to die or their family's going to die, and it's this fear-based practice, really. So they're entrenched in this torment, really, of life. But anyway, so this example of, which comes to the microfinance, wants to be a part of it, but every time she comes into the meeting, she's tormented because it's about Jesus, and she screams and runs out. So she stands on the outskirts, but she still really wants to be a part of this. So my staff call me and they say, Rebecca, what do we do here? Do we turn her away and say she can't be a part of the program because she can't stand to be inside with us because she's tormented? And I said, well, can she stand on the outskirts and still hear everything that's going on inside? And they said yes. And I said, then let her join. Okay, as long as she can hear,
She'll learn something.
So we are having witches come to Jesus, and it's all because our staff isn't afraid of it. Many of them, their moms or dads were the highest voodoo priest in their area, or even witches themselves. They're not afraid of any of this because this is how some of them grew up as well that are on staff with us. And so to them, the answer is Jesus. But they don't have that fear, even though they're...
What about you?
Does it scare you?
They've been there for all their lives, so they know about that. But you're like us. You hear this and you probably have to be scared.
I always say I don't dig too far into what and how they do things because I don't want to walk in that fear. Mm-hmm. And so people say, well, don't you know they can do this and that? I choose naivety on some of these things, but when I see them praying under their breath, I'm praying under my breath as we're going into these villages.
Thank you for listening to the Voice with Action podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, would you consider sharing or subscribing to this podcast and leave a 5-star review to help us grow? If you want to reach us or help us end child trafficking in West Africa, go to orphanreliefandrescue.org. That's orphanreliefandrescue.org. See you next week.